lip comes up, breath in, chin down. That's a wave of emotion, like an extreme fear. And she regains control of herself. Look at that again. Yeah, that really did happen. And the memory of it gives her a very strong emotional response.
A physiological blind spot, or blind point, is the point in your visual field that corresponds to the small area in the retina of the eye which is insensitive to light. Unless you're some sort of shape-shifting alien lizard, you will have a blind spot. So by way of example, if you cover your left eye, stare at the cross with your right eye, and slowly move towards the computer screen, at some point you will find that the black circle will disappear, and the area where the black circle was will now be entirely white. That is your blind spot. Metaphorically speaking, we all have our own psychological equivalents of blind spots, because we all see the world in a particular way. And in the absence of important information, we will almost inevitably be inclined to fill in the blanks in a way that makes the most sense to us based on our own personal perspectives, experiences, and prejudices. We all have our own psychological blind spots, but many people also experience what I describe as a glass blind spot, which essentially is a blind spot that is so big that an elephant could hide in it. A glass blind spot can be described as a psychological phenomenon where people consciously and often even unconsciously ignore highly relevant information because to acknowledge its existence would be to significantly undermine or detract from their preferred narrative or how they would prefer that people see the world around them. Some people genuinely won't see the massive fucking elephant in the room, waving its trunk around and staring right back at them, while others will simply choose to ignore it, whatever the potential consequences. Having watched some of the news coverage about the tragedy that recently unfolded in Las Vegas, I've seen quite a lot of examples, people filling in the gaps and jumping to conclusions that perhaps best suit their own worldview or possible preferred political perspective. Here's a brief clip from the YouTube channel Bombard's Body Language to emphasize this point.
So someone came in and told them they're all going to die tonight. And it looks like, if it's true, that Antifa is taking responsibility. If anything, that organization is declaring war on the American people, not on the government, because they're not shooting at cops. Oh, but they shot at cops. They were down. No. Their target mainly was civilians at a concert where some government employees were too. Their main target is civilians. You really have to wonder about an organization that isn't attacking the government they claim to hate, but is attacking its civilians.
Now, given the continued absence of any credible motive for the senseless slaughter of 58 innocent concert-goers, not to mention the maiming of over 500 others, it is inevitable that people will fill in the blanks with their own theories, and perhaps even propose narratives that have at least as much to do with the way they would like to see the world than it has to do with the way it necessarily is, or why such a tragedy really occurred, or indeed how we can all do our best to help something like this from ever happening again. People in the so-called alternative media have been particularly singled out for jumping to unhelpfully rash conclusions about what did or didn't happen. And in this era of fake news, mistrust and misinformation, the likes of Google and Facebook have been accused of failing in their responsibility to stop false or misleading stories from reaching the public. But it was not my intention to appear critical of Mandy over at Bombard's Body Language by picking out her example. Indeed, even if I'm not personally convinced, I'm happy to concede that in the absence of additional information, her thoughts on the shooter's possible motive seems to be one of the more logical ones to have been expressed so far. The reason I've picked this particular clip is in fact because I'm very much convinced by Mandy's abilities as a body language expert and the fact that she concludes that the testimony given by the woman in the video is entirely true and honest. And this points to a massive glass blind spot in the way the mainstream media have covered this story to date. But even if we trust Mandy's assessment that the lady is telling the truth about witnessing a very dramatic and public early warning that could have helped to avoid the massacre entirely, even then there may very well be an entirely rational and credible explanation as to why this seemingly crucial testimony appears to have been completely dismissed or ignored by the investigating authorities, as well as, with the exception of a few very early reports, by our own established news media, especially when it comes to detailing the various versions of a significantly shifting timeline of events. But in the continued absence of any sort of seeming explanation whatsoever, be it logical or otherwise, is it any wonder why so many people increasingly feel that the so-called alternative media are as much a part of the solution to this very modern phenomenon of fake news as it is supposedly the problem? And in the continued absence of any sort of seemingly logical explanation whatsoever, is it possible that the increasing levels of mistrust and decreasing levels of confidence that people have with their once relatively trusted news media is that mainstream news media's biggest glass blind spot of them all?
I thought it had a positive correlation to it. Like, obviously she was telling us that in either to tell us, to warn us, or to tell us that we were all going to die, and she was part of it. So
okay, we're going to ask you a question here. Go ahead.
So I have a question. Let's nail this down so that it's
Sure.
a matter of record. I want to know the description of this woman. We hear that this woman who made her way to the front of the stage and then told a lot of people, you're all going to die tonight. I want to know from this witness here on scene the description of this woman, just so if any of our Metro partners are watching this, it is made a matter of record tonight.
Okay, so they want the description of this woman. Describe to me what this woman looked like.
her and her boyfriend were both Hispanic. They were probably about shorter 5-footers, probably about 5'5", 5'6". They just look like everyday people. Just.
Can you tell us anything more about them, what they look like? Why were they escorted out? Were they escorted out because you were feeling uncomfortable about what they said?
Yes, because she had been messing with the lady in front of her and telling her that she was going to die, that we were all going to die. So they escorted her out to make her stop messing around with all the other people in front of them, but none of us knew that it was going to be serious.
Bree, did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
You know, we want to caution and remind everyone to sort of be careful about some of the information. We're doing our best here at News 3, along with the help of Detective Phil Ramos here, to try to be as responsible as possible with the information that we're delivering.
So right now, making sure people are safe, making sure no one else is hurt is the #1 priority right now. So very good point to bring that up, because a lot of emotions are raw and we don't know what those people were down there doing. It could be very significant. It could be not significant at all.
Can't you see it too? There's an elephant in the room.